Of like wheel within a wheel, like something like right out of the Bible. Look at these. This is over New Jersey. Does that look like some sort of any kind of a drone that you've ever seen before? Well, the problem is we don't know because no one's telling us. And even in front of Congress, they're not. So that even looks like biblical drawings, like a wheel within a wheel, like Ezekiel, right? I mean, you have drawings like this going back thousands.
You are in Tennessee, so you're in a different area where we haven't heard as much about this. Tell us about your sighting.
Yeah, mine's different than your all's. Mine's a lot different. Mine don't look like what you're showing there at all. These things are round. The ones that I saw were round. And they've got this ring around them. And around the ring, it's got little lights on it, and the light is spinning. And on the video that I sent you guys, you can see that at first before I zoom in on it. Because when I zoom in, it gets all blurry, and it looks like it's changing shapes, but it really isn't. But if you look really closely, you'll see how there's a thing spinning around it. And so I don't know but mine didn't look like a plane at all. And I saw like 30 of them all together. Yeah, that thing right there was the first one. I believe that was the first one. And when it scooches in, you can sort of see that? You can sort of see there's something spinning around it.
Yep.
Yeah, but it's hooked to it. It's like a ring.
It's so hard at night to video these things. I mean, that's the thing. It's like no matter, it looks so distinctive in person, and then you look at the video. Even with our new iPhones, it's just you can't really capture it. But are you sure it wasn't a plane, Scott? Because sometimes it's hard to tell.
Positive. I think all three of your guests tonight, we're all professional observers, and that's one of the things that we check out. What does it sound like? What does it look like? What is it doing? What does it sound like? And that had no sound at all. And there were. At one point, there were five when I after I saw this one, and there were three up in the by themselves, and there were two ahead of it that came past those, and then as they went on, the other three started following that one. Then they split up, and then I got video of where there's one there in different sections of the front yard and the backyard. You could see them through the trees, but these were completely different than what you guys were seeing. These are completely different.
You know, when things like this are happening, it seems everyone starts to look up, like my crew and I have been here in Mendham recording this video that you're looking at right now. We have no idea what it is, if it's a natural phenomenon, because it could be, but this is why so many municipalities are now asking people to reach out and send their videos to them or to experts who might be able to sort out what they're seeing in the skies. But I guarantee there are so many people looking up and making those recordings because this mystery is one that needs to be solved. For now, we're live here in Mendham Borough. Tony Yates, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
Lee's saying he's wondering whether or not that might be the moon, Tony, but you pointed out it's exactly the question people are asking. What is it?
No. Yeah. Yeah, no, we're looking at the moon right now, and that's nowhere near the moon.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, the moon.
They didn't make a sound. It was, a couple hundred feet above us. You just didn't know what you were looking at. It was moving across the sky very quietly, and we kept saying to each other, like Nick and I, like, what are we looking at? Like, are you getting the shot, and what the heck are we filming? There's a couple shots you can see where you can see that it's fixed wing, and it doesn't look like a plane. It almost looks like inverted. It sounds crazy as I say this now, Brian, like that's what you're seeing on the screen. That's what we were seeing right above our heads. And it happened till about 11:30 at night. And then it started to like die off. And I was like, we could stay out here all night. But I went to bed. This is my community. I've never seen these things in the sky over my community before. I went to bed thinking like, this is wild. These things are flying over our homes, over our residences. There's a military Earl, which is a munitions depot just like about a mile and a half behind me. They've reported sightings of these things above, and they said they're ready to take action if they need to. This is for naysayers out there, like, this is real.
So how many did you see at once, Rich? Was it just the one, or?
Well, no, I think we would see a couple at a time in various parts of the sky over this water. And we'd be like, oh, we didn't get this shot on that one. And they'd be like, well, wait, we'll just wait. I'm sure there'll be another one. And sure enough, like, one started creeping towards us. And it's like, it felt like I was in a bad sci-fi movie, like that it was just that I was placed in, but it involved my actual hometown. It was very, very surreal.
I mean, to hear you saying this, again, it just sort of hits me in a different way coming from you. Wow.
The buzz is very big in the desert Southwest, where it's really never gone away after some weird happenings in the skies over Phoenix recently. And here's NBC's Robert Hager.
This is one of several home videos recorded that night last March. A few say they saw the lights as far as 100 miles north of Phoenix. Many more saw them over the city or to the south.
It was the evening of March 13th, 1997. People across Arizona, especially here in the valley, reported seeing a silent, miles-long V-shaped group of lights gliding quietly overhead. Was it a military mission, a prank perhaps, or visitors from outer space? The questions and confusion over the sighting have only grown during the prevailing years.
Some, like Tim and Bobby Lee, claim they saw even more.
Something was there. It was a structure. It was going 35 miles an hour. It was huge. It didn't make a sound. And you tell me what can do that.
It was flying low. It was within half a mile of me. There's no plane path at that point, and it didn't act like a plane. A plane can't turn that fast. And it also had oddly spiral kinds of movements that you just don't see with a plane.
And so it was
and
last
there was no noise. Again, no noise. Yeah,
no
exactly.
noise. Rich, you were out on the story last night, didn't know what to expect, and take it from there. I mean, what happened?
Off the top, I've been skeptical of this story. As a resident of New Jersey, as a journalist here, I thought it was going to be some sort of yahoos, and we would get a laugh out of this in several weeks. What happened yesterday completely changed my entire view on this story. Earlier in the afternoon, I was out with the Ocean City Sheriff's Department. They have a drone unit. They've investigated these things. They've saw a bunch over the weekend. We did not see any with them last night. I was coming back home. I got a tip. Monmouth County, they're spotting them in Monmouth County. That's where I live. So I raced up here and I tried to figure out where the picture was that somebody sent me. And sure enough, I saw one. So I trailed it to a neighborhood, a dead-end street, and I got out of my car and I took my phone out with my iPhone, and I couldn't really capture it, but I was staring literally at this drone 200 feet above me, maybe. I called our photographer, Nick, and I said, get up here as soon as you possibly can. Meet me at this location, etc. I tracked a few more to the location where we are right now, over a body of water behind us. And I got to say, Brian, over the next 2 hours, we saw dozens and dozens of these things, and they look like nothing you've ever seen before. I'm not even sure I'm right in calling them a drone. They looked like they were fixed wing aircraft. They had multiple, blinking lights. They did not look anything like a plane, because there's plenty of planes flying overhead. Like tonight, they're not here. We're seeing just planes. Last night was totally different. They look creepy, and they move at a different pace. We tried to even follow a couple. They went off in the distance and disappeared. It's completely rewired my brain on this topic, and I'm a believer, and we need answers. And we don't have answers, and we need someone to step up and say, here is what's going on. Because otherwise, we're heading down this path in New Jersey and these states where people are just going to take this into their own hands.
Yeah, and I'm looking at your video right now. We have it in the middle of the screen. I know it's tough at night when you're using your iPhone and it's pitch black. You said you were near the water, but so it's kind of hard to see. But we've heard these reports from people, but hearing it from you, Rich, as our investigative reporter, knowing the kind of work you do, it is kind of freaky to hear you say that that you couldn't identify it. Describe it a little more. I mean, how big? And when I think of a drone, you think of it's got the four. It's almost like a little helicopter with the four rotors. Are these not? Do these look different than that?
They look different. They almost look like a U-shaped or a V-shaped. They didn't make a sound.
People across Arizona and in some other states report seeing a silent, miles-long V-shaped group of lights gliding quietly overhead.
People up in northern Arizona saw lights that were distinctly red. Major sighting here.
Valley resident Dr. Lynn Kitai saw the lights that evening and has been exploring the phenomenon for decades. She says rather than interest in the Phoenix Lights event fading over time, it has actually evolved.
Because the mass sighting, whatever you've heard, wasn't just 1 or 2 hours. It was many hours, over a dozen hours in over 4 states.
Thousand witnesses who have come forward with regard to what they saw over the state of Arizona on Thursday night, the 13th of March, 1997. It is still an untold story.
Coming from Prescott, south to Phoenix Valley area.
This is huge formation of lights, V formation of lights.
Next thing you know, it was in a V shape.
And most UFO stories, they always talk about being round ships. This was a big black triangle.
This thing was way lower than an airplane and much bigger.
Some see just a string of hovering lights. Some grab video cameras to take pictures. The closest thing to official explanation is Air Force planes dropping flares, an explanation UFO investigators say doesn't wash. Those flares happened too far away, too late in the night.
On the night we were taking calls on the hotline in Seattle, we could almost track this object on a map.
Peter Davenport directs the National UFO Reporting Center in Seattle. Call came in that night from many places in Arizona, one he can't forget.
We got a telephone call from a young man who identified himself as being an airman in the U.S. Air Force and stationed at Luke Air Force Base.
At 8:15, the ready alert at Luke Air Force Base, which is two F-15s that we keep on ready alert, they were launched because all broke loose, basically. They encountered something over the sky, over Phoenix, Arizona, over the area of 7th Avenue and Indian School Road. They don't know what it was. The description that one of the pilots stated that they had a visual on it, they've got gun camera film of it, they have no radar tape of it, scared the hell out of them.
He helped the pilot out of the cockpit. He reported to us that the pilot was talking about the intercept, and he was badly shaken by what had just happened in his life.
He saw 5 distinct lights in a triangular pattern. First 3 lights were in a tight triangular formation. He'll never talk. He's a real professional. I've never seen this man scared.
He called to report to us that they had not yet received orders not to talk about what had happened there, but he wanted us to know what had taken place. Essentially, an intercept occurred. Apparently, Luke launched F-15Cs.
Which the first real problem with the caller's story. You see, the last time Luke Air Base officially had 15Cs operating off of these runways was back in November of 1993. Since then, Luke has been purely an F-16 training base. But that doesn't mean that 15Cs may not still come and go occasionally from Luke. Other witnesses insist they also saw fighter jets meet the strange craft.
And 2 jets flew towards, coming from the west, heading east. Both jets flew underneath this big orange orb, and one of them shot off to the north, and the other one double backed and flew underneath it and went back to where it came from.
A spokeswoman for Luke Air Base says the base airspace controller officially records no flights from Luke that night. But she says other people on the base do recall planes taking off and landing that night.
He was scared to death. He's not sure what it was. They landed, the base was, we had a complete lockdown. The facility was closed.
2 days after the so-called Phoenix Lights UFO incident, Peter Davenport says the Luke Airman called back.
He had just been hauled into his commander's office, and his commander had apprised him that within 24 hours' time, he, the airman, would be transferred to Greenland, and that he was to pack all of his bags, that he was going to be gone. We have not heard from that individual since the 16th of March, 1997.
So, Rich, you've been reporting on this for a couple of days. What do you make of the Homeland Security response that essentially the people are misidentifying these objects, that most of the time it's planes, and the secretary, Homeland Security Secretary, was actually on TV tonight saying, they keep saying there's no threat to the public. I mean, you've seen them for yourself. You don't seem satisfied with that response.
All due respect, Brian, to the security advisor, it's tone deaf, it's insulting. I know a bunch of state legislatures and sheriffs here in New Jersey who would be happy to talk to him. The Ocean County Sheriff told me a story yesterday that over the weekend there was one of his officers was on the beach, called 911, reported seeing 50 drones come off the ocean inland. They called everybody, the FBI, the Coast Guard, whatever. The Coast Guard went out to investigate, told them they had 13 drones following them in. This is documented stuff. This isn't just like, Bill down the street is calling this in and nobody's verifying these things. These are real people, like police officers. This is happening. So they need to get, they should be scrambling something up here, figure it out. I'm surprised they haven't put a plane up just to say, here's what we've done. But to see no response, no federal response is truly upsetting. And the longer this goes on, as I mentioned before, somebody's just going to take matters into their own hands and just, now that Trump is saying what he's saying, they're going to do it. They're going to take a rifle and shoot one of these things.
Yeah, and I mean, look, with video and phones and social media, you can't just say, oh, nothing to see here anymore. The government can't really get away with that anymore. I mean, clearly everybody's seeing it. I'm just curious, Rich, I'm looking at your video again. It's such good video you got, but you can see the blinking on it almost looks like wings, almost like a plane would, which makes me think, do you think, based on what you saw, these are some kind of military drone, some kind of technology that, because, with UFOs that we've covered, this looks like man-made, maybe, I could say, from what I'm seeing, although it's blurry. I mean, is that the sense that you got?
I hope so, Brian. That thought went through my mind, and there is some sort of hope in my brain that this is a secret military operation that at a base near here, and they're calling it red teaming, where they're coming out to test for lapses in our security and where we would be at fault. I hope that that's the solution, or that's what we find out in a week or 2 weeks. If we don't find that out, if it's not our military, it's worse. It's a scary scenario if it's not our military.